Hello. Welcome back to Brenda's Books. Thank you for coming back to listen to Queen Andraya. First, I have a favor to ask. I am in the works of creating bonus content for my podcast, and I would really love your opinion about what you would most prefer that content to be. So in the description of this episode, I have a link where it brings you to a poll, and I think there's like 7 options, and all you have to do is click the link, click whichever ones you want, boom. It'll take you 30 seconds. And that way, when I start creating bonus content, you will be able to listen to what you voted for, hopefully. So, anyway, without further ado, today we are on Chapter 36. Here we go. Chapter 36, The Escape. Oh, the smell of this place. How could anything smell so wretched? Andraya glanced around at the filthy cave, which secured the slaves' secret hideout. The dozen or so people sitting on the dirt floor did not even seem to notice the stifling stench in the air. Then the queen spotted some rats in the far corner. They had obviously been stabbed and were lying in the dust by a burnt-out fire. She assumed these awful creatures were going to be the slaves' next dinner. Andraya covered her mouth and heaved. Rats. Could there be a worse meal? Just then, a huge critter with 8 legs creeped across the logs of the would-be fire. A spider. And by the looks of it, it was a poisonous one. An involuntary squeal escaped Andraya's lips, and she jumped in place. Colleen placed a hand on the queen's shoulder, and so did Benjamin. Andraya's mind flashed with the agonizing memory of vomiting venom, and it shook her entire body. Colleen rubbed her back in anxious circles. "Oh yeah," said Nicholas. "We'd better get rid of that." Then Nicholas lifted a shovel and crashed it down on the spider's head. Several yelps squeaked through the crowd. "Anyway," Nicholas said, "tomorrow at noon, that's when we attack. That's when the merchants usually take a break. It's too bad your friend could not convince the Sami to help us," he said, motioning toward Andraya. "We need to go back for him," said the queen. Nicholas crossed his legs on the dirt floor. "I'm sorry for what happened." Andraya knew this was not just a polite condolence, but also a dismissal of her comment. No matter, Andraya thought. I will go back and get him. The queen was not going to leave Steffan there to die. She did not know how she was going to slip away from Hudson, but she would do it. She had to. "But how do we keep the children safe?" someone in the group asked. Andraya could not see his face in the dim light. "Well, Van, we'll just have to keep him out of the fight," said Nicholas. "That won't work," Van said. "The merchants are bound to find him." "How about you commandeer one of the Chaldean ships?" Andraya suggested. "The one I arrived in a couple of days ago has plenty of space to hold 100 of you at least." "We don't have a sailor," said a woman in the crowd. Again, Andraya could not make out her face. "I can," said another man. "I sailed the ship that brought my family here from Gulen." "Well, that's all right and good, Jershan," said Nicholas. "But where would we go?" "To Chaldrea," said the queen. "You could be free there." Several people in the group chuckled and scoffed. "We would just be slaves there," said the woman. "What is your name, miss?" Andraya asked. "Maria," the woman said curtly. "You would not be slaves, Maria," Andraya replied calmly. "Chaldrea is a free kingdom, and the queen would give you land to build your own houses on." The group scoffed again. "If Chaldrea is a free kingdom, then why do its ships transport slaves from here to there?" the man named Jershan asked. "Chaldrea only allows its ships to be used to transport between Sandrian and Gulen," explained Andraya. "But that will change in the future, and the kingdom will no longer be involved with slavery whatsoever." "How do you know this?" asked Nicholas. "I am from Chaldrea, and I work in a position where I hear a lot of things," Andraya hedged. "Do you really think the queen will help us?" A little voice chimed from the other end of the cave. Andraya looked over at her. She sat closer to the cave's edge, and the sunlight shone down on her young, dirty face. Her dark, scraggly hair hung down her cheeks, barely revealing her deep brown eyes. "I know she will, sweetheart," said Andraya.
"Why should we believe this woman?" said Van. "She has no credibility with us."
"You can trust her," Colleen and Benjamin said in unison.
"Oh, that makes me feel so much better," Van cried.
Then arguments spluttered throughout the group.
"Well, it's worth the risk," shouted Nicholas. "Don't you think it's better than staying in Sandrian, or your families being killed in battle?"
That muffled the group quite a bit.
"Do you think we could fit 200 on that ship?" Nicholas asked Andraya.
"Well, not comfortably," the Queen replied, but
can it be done?"
"Yes," said Andraya.
"Jershon, would you be willing to come back and get the rest of us after you drop the first group off in Chaldrea?"
"Yes, of course. But
there's nothing else to do," Nicholas insisted.
"I think there might be 2 ships," said Colleen, in her sweet, soft voice. "Was the port you came on busy or not?" Colleen asked Andraya. "It was not busy at all," the Queen replied. "I think you came in on the north port then," Colleen said. "Perhaps all of us can fit on the 2 ships, and all of us can go to Chaldrea." "How many of you are there?" Andraya asked.
"About 500, Nicholas chimed in. "What do you think, friends? Should we try to go find a better life for ourselves?"
Various mutterings and yips rippled the group, some more exuberant than others. But what made the Queen the happiest was the bright look of hope she saw in the eyes of the little girl.
"New plan," Nicholas said with confidence. "We meet at noon tomorrow, but with the intent to commandeer the Chaldean ships. That means half of us will have to escape to the North Port. We attack if necessary. Now, we better get back to work before our masters notice we're missing."
The entire group stood and shuffled their grudging feet out of the cave. "We will go try to find some food," Colleen said to Nicholas. She motioned to Benjamin, Andraya, and Hudson to include them. The Queen loved that idea. She would eat anything at this point. Well, except a rat. Colleen clutched Andraya's arm as they passed various markets down the crowded Sandrian streets. "We must get Andraya something to eat," Colleen said to Benjamin. "She is going to faint soon." Benjamin nodded and stepped toward the vegetable stand on his right, but immediately stepped back at the sight of its rotten tomatoes.
"First, we must find food that will not kill us," Benjamin muttered.
Then Hudson walked toward them. He held something in his hand which dripped with blood. "Hudson, what happened?" Andraya asked.
"I have dinner for you," he replied.
He opened his hand to reveal a bloody sardine. Andraya choked down a gag. "It is clean, I promise," said Hudson. "I just skinned it myself." Andraya closed her eyes and sucked in a breath, reminding herself that at least this was not a rat. She picked off the flesh with her fingers, and to her surprise soon devoured it all. "Now we must get the rest of you something to eat, and maybe we can bring something back to the slaves." Her 3 cohorts nodded and looked around, each grimacing in their own way at the different foods around them. "Where is Peanut?" Andraya asked. Hudson pointed with his head behind the Queen. Andraya turned to see Peanut tied to the post of a fish market stand. She stiffened when she saw a rowdy group of men surrounding her horse. They shoved each other and cursed loudly. Suddenly, one of them pushed a table upside down, causing fresh fish to slither and flop to the ground. This is when the punching began. Peanut, who was nearby, started to panic and fidget her hooves nervously. One man untied her and whipped her with a stick as he tried to climb onto her back. "Excuse me, that is my horse," Andraya called. The man turned to face her, his long, greasy beard flipping around with him. One glimpse at Andraya and his wicked green eyes gleamed. "Come and get her, missy," he spit. Andraya moved to do just that, but Hudson stopped her. This incident caused a rupture of chaos throughout the entire street. 3 men decided it would be fun to attempt to shove Hudson around, but her massive bodyguard did not budge. Andraya looked around to find Colleen and Benjamin, but somehow amidst the frantic crowd they were lost from her view. The bearded man kept trying to jump onto Peanut, despite the horse's incessant rearing.
Andraya bumped her way through the crowd and grabbed a hold of Peanut's reins, and finally she kept her front hooves planted on the ground.
"Ah, thanks, princess,"
the bearded man sneered.
"I knew you'd want to come with me."
Andraya grabbed hold of his beard and yanked as hard as she could, then poked a firm finger straight in his eye. The man flinched and moved to lunge for Andraya, but Hudson thrust him back just in time. The bearded man panted as Hudson tightened his hold around his neck.
"Thank you, Hudson,"
Andraya said.
She jumped onto Peanut's back.
"And please forgive me." And with that, she let Peanut sprint ahead, parting the crowd as she did. Andraya risked a glance behind her. Hudson's huge self stood above the others, staring back at her with large, furious eyes. And that concludes chapter 36. Thank you so much for listening to Queen Andraya. I hope you're enjoying it. And again, please fill out that poll for me. I would really appreciate it. And as always, I hope you have a fantastic week. Until next time, take care.